Hello, humans, and welcome to another episode of Gen X Gamer. So let's talk about homebrews, porting them to other places, right? Porting them to the Nintendo Switch, maybe to Steam, maybe to Xbox. You want to see those games somewhere else. And I've seen more people say, hey, I would really like to play this game. I don't have it in television. I don't have an Atari. I don't have a Nintendo. How come you don't, put it somewhere else so you could sell more? It's been a conversation, and a lot of people have a lot of questions that people have, but it's like anything else, guys. It's about money. It really is about money. And I wrote down a few notes here. I've been wanting to talk about this. Let me do a couple of reminders, guys. I was planning on making more videos, but we had to take the baby to the doctor because she had a little bit of a stomach flu, but she's fine. I'm able to sit down and do this right now. Also, for channel members, there's going to be Steam keys. Pay attention. Usually on the weekends, maybe I'll drop some in the middle of the week. And for those of you who are not subscribers to the channel, stay tuned because I might have slipped up and made a couple of those public. All right, I can't remember. I'm just so tired. I scheduled the releases of the posts. All right, but if you're a fan of Steam, that's the easiest way for me to put them out there. So members, stay out. I think there's like 3 games out there you guys can go check out. All I ask is if you do take the key, just leave a comment so people can know that you already took it, right? But there's already 10 uploaded, and what I'm doing, guys, I'm going throughout my backlog of games that I bought up to date, and I have so many. So I'm never going to be able to finish these games, guys. I might as well share them with you guys or with the channel members because it's just too many. I'm too busy. I'm too busy. There is no way that I'm going to get through all those games. So maybe some of you out there, I'm just going to get the ones that they're up to my taste. But like in bundles or when you buy games on sale, whatever, you get a bunch of games, and there's some that I'm just never going to get to play, guys. I mean, I'm just being realistic. So stay tuned for that. So let's get into the subject here. How come you're not seeing these homebrew games out there? Let me tell you, it's about money. Now, what is it that you're doing? Right? What is it you're doing? It's fine that you created a game, you're a fan, you programmed it yourself, right? But if you're doing it for business, it's about making money. Right? And you look at these developers and you ask them, hey, why don't you put it on here? Why don't you put it on there? Well, they need to rely on publishers. And why is that? Because it takes money. Right? It takes a lot of money to put these up. And let me just break down the numbers for you from cheapest to the most expensive, and what really you're proposing for them to do is to build a retro-focused publishing company, if you will. Like somebody would have to invest in this, or one of the majors would have to invest in it because of the amounts of money that we're talking about, right? What are you doing? You need you need funds for porting and to do the QA on it, right? You have to publish on modern platforms. You have to handle sales and marketing, storefront management, and you have to split the revenue with the original developer, whoever that is. You're not funding the full game development. What you're actually doing is you're acquiring the IP from that developer, from that homebrew maker, and upgrading it so you can put it to distribution, right? Let's talk about Switch. What are the pros? It's a huge install base, huge, right? A lot of retro-friendly people. It has a strong indie ecosystem. Yeah, sure, why not? What are the cons? The cons is that you need a dev kit, right? You need certification. The lot check for Nintendo is typically very strict. The porting complexity is going to be higher. What is the typical cost of porting a game? That's the magic question, right? So you better have a banger because your cost can range anywhere from $25,000 to $60,000 depending on what the game is. The game is simple, maybe closer to the 25. If the game is very complicated, it's closer to the 60, right? But we're going to stay on the simple side of things because we're talking about retro games, right? So we're closer to 25 to 45 with Nintendo. If I was pitching an investment, I would say 35. You want to be in the middle, right? And usually you're never going to come under budget, guys. You just don't want to, lowball the investors too much because nobody's going to buy in. They're going to say, okay, you want me to fund you 60 grand for what game? Right? If they're savvy, they're going to go, wait, this one? We're doing biplanes? John Alvarado? Biplanes? No. And that's with the Intelligent Amico or Happy Home Games, whatever the hell they're called now. That's what they're going through in order to satisfy, the owners, the investors, whatever you want to call them, that they're actually doing something. But it's too much of an expense to put up for a game that is not worth it. It's a loser. I mean, if you want to do a tax write-off, if you have that kind of money, if your company is making too much money because you invested in AI, you want to dump it in something, there you go. Port something over to the Switch that nobody wants, right? But what about Steam, right? Steam is a little bit friendlier. That's why you see a lot of them there, guys. And, what are the pros? Like it's $100, I think, for the Steam Direct fee, right? There's no dev kit required. There's no certification gates, like a Nintendo. It's fast publishing and it's a very fast turnaround. And there's a massive retro audience, right? You have more accessibility to players. Here's the problem. Being discovered is brutal. So you have to spend more on marketing, right? Like you have to really pump it up. And the revenue cut is 30%, right? What is the typical port cost? Well, it could be anywhere from $8,000, right, to $25,000 per title. Again, depending on the complexity and size of the title, right? Well, let me ask you, are you willing to do that? Right? This is why a lot of people go through, Kickstarters, right? And that's a good way to go because you get the, you can get the digital edition and you can get the physical edition, and that probably is the friendliest way, right? The friendliest way to do it. Now, remember, you have to split the revenue with the original creator. How do you split that, right? Like if you're an investor, how do you do that? One of the reasons you don't see it a lot in Xbox, believe it or not, and I don't know why this is, that their costs are higher. They're in like the 20 to 50 range, 50K range. So, that's a lot of investment. And you remember, if you want to publish it on all three, that's per platform that you're spending this money on. All right, so if you're averaging, 10 to 15 grand a platform, you're talking about 45 grand. That's a lot of money to put on a game that you don't know if you're going to make any money on. Right? You don't know if you're going to recover those costs. As the publisher, the game developer, maybe they did a Kickstarter, right? They sold their cartridges, they're selling ROMs, and now they're already probably selling on Steam, right? They could do that. So now you have to carry it over forward. There's a lot of things you could do with 25 grand, with 50 grand, let me tell you, that would guarantee you a return as opposed to gambling it away on a video game. You want bangers, that's the challenge that these companies have, right? So the thing that you have to remember, and I asked this question when I was thinking about this video earlier, I asked the Retro Bro, how come you can't port it, right, or just convert it from Atari or NES code? Well, this is what he told me, that the older systems were assembly language, hardware specific, memory mapping, and custom graphic pipelines, right? And modern platforms use C++ or C, Unity, SDL. So most ports require, right, rewriting of gameplay logic, rebuilding a graphics pipeline, UI scaling, achievements integration, save systems, and of course QA testing. It's not a file conversion. Hey, you're not unzipping a folder. And you have to think about the realistic costs, right? People have to get paid. Nobody's going to do it for free, right? Nobody's working for free. If you're a publisher and you're out there seeking these independent indie developers, you're going to share revenue with them. What is that going to look like? You're already taking you're only making 70%, right, from whatever platform you're on. And then on top of that, of your 70%, you have to split that with the original creator, right? They're not going to give you their IP for free. You have to make a deal. Is it going to be a flat licensing fee for every platform? Maybe if you give them a flat fee plus 5%, or if you're just starting out, say, okay, I'm going to give you 20% of my 70% because 30% is being taken on by by the platform. So you need a porting developer, right? How much is that going to cost you? Do you want a good one or do you want a cheap one, right? A cheap one is probably about 40. A good one's probably about 90, right? So your estimated cost, depending on the game, could be anywhere from 12,000 to 45 grand. That's a lot of money, right? You have to build all this stuff in. How much is the QA testing? Well, who's going to QA? It should be somebody that knows something about games, right? So if they like you, maybe 3 grand. If you can't find anybody that does that for a living that likes you, it's probably 10 grand. Maybe you have to contract out. You have to get store assets, marketing. What are you going to do for that? That's why people reach out to a lot of YouTubers, because if you do it the normal way, it could be 8 grand that you're spending on marketing, right? Advertising and all that. And then there's even legal, right? You have to get an IP lawyer, all that stuff, right? So let's look at a realistic budget per platform. Oh, I know you guys are loving this, right? You love the numbers. That's why you're here. All right, Steam only, right? The lowest on the low end, 15K. On the higher end, 25K, right? Depending on what your game is, right? That's a variable. Switch, 35 to 60K, and then Microsoft, if you do all of them, right? Let's just say you do all of them for argument's sake, it could be anywhere from 70 to 120K. Right? Again, it depends on the kind of game that you want to port. And then what are you selling these games for? $4.99, $7.99? I mean, people are balking at $15.99, $9.99, right? How many games do you have to sell? So let's do some revenue math to get you in the mindset of a publisher, what they're thinking about. Okay, let's say, I sell it on Steam and I sell it for $9.99, right? We don't want to go $10, $9.99. Steam takes 30%, right? Now I got $7 per game. If you sell 5,000 copies, which Happy Home Games can't do, what a failure. So 5,000 copies at $7 a piece is what, 35 grand. So if your port costs you 20 grand, you'll break even around 3,000 copies around. Sure, why not? That's a realistic figure for a strong niche title, right? You want to go over that over time because you only have to do it once, right? Maybe they'll go on sale, but when they go on sale, you're not making as much. But I mean, you want to make some money. But if you're going to make 10, 15% of your money doing this, taking risk, right? You have to assess the risk of the person investing. You do. Because they don't have to invest. If you get a decent business analyst to run your stocks for you, right? One that, if you consult a professional like you should do, and you tell them your goals, listen, I got 25 grand here. I don't want to invest them. I don't want to invest them in this homebrew game. I want you to make 10% a year. Can you do that? They'll strive for that, right? And that's going to be pretty much a constant, as opposed to just burning your money away on a title that you don't know. I mean, if you want to do it yourself, just help create the games yourself. Fund the games yourself for a particular platform, whether it's Atari or in television or whatever, NES. But when you have to go that extra step, right? That's when you need the publisher, because they got the big bucks. You don't, right? You as an indie, are you going to take, I don't know, $50,000 out of your family's account for your dream project? If you're married, your wife is going to kill you. I could tell you that. You go, honey, we're going to be rich. We're going to be rich. Okay, so let's talk about revenue split, right? It's 70-30 with the publisher, then 50-50 after the costs are recovered, right? So the publisher has to recover their costs, so it's 70-30. Then we split it 50-50 after that. A cleaner model for retro, right? So you can keep developers trying to publish your games after you recoup the investment should be 60-40. That's why people want to pump these games out, right? Or you can get a flat licensing fee, $5,000 to $10,000. Especially if somebody's just making games brand new. If you offer them $5,000, okay, for $5,000 let me port your game. Again, that's part of cost of doing business. So you just have to add it to what you're spending, to the $20,000, right? So from 20 you went to 25. Okay, and then your audience would probably respect that model more, and you're telling, hey, I pay my guys. Like Tommy used to say, hey, I pay my guys. Nobody's getting paid. Now, when it makes sense to expand, right? Like if you're selling 3,000 to 5,000 copies, yeah, people are digging your game, man. Maybe there's something here, Maybe I start pitching my games to these publishing houses because I'm making bangers. The pre-orders are telling me that. That's what you want to do. And because if not, the publishers are not going to look at you. They're not going to take you seriously, right? Because if they want to do a multi-platform, say for you, and let's say they give you a budget of $80,000, right? At $7 net games sale, right? Because the publisher takes, whatever it is, 30%. So yeah, so it's only $7 for you, $3 for them. You need about 11,500 units across all platforms, right? Just to break even. That is achievable, right? With a good game. The game has to be genuinely good. And that's just it. So many of the games that we buy in these homebrews are niche games. And again, you have to deal with the IP property things because a lot of them are tributes to other games. So you don't know what it could be. A game mechanic, it could be a character, it could be a song, it could be. All that needs to be checked out, right? And you have to do some YouTube marketing, right? So let me tell you, you understand what the market is if you're watching this video. You know what people are doing. But you have to understand that there is a business gap. There really is. You have to take in the cost of reality. You have to take in the risk, right? And that's what investors look like, right? That's why they hire people like me. They say evaluate risk, right? Because even whoever you're going to work with is risk. You want to make sure that you get the right people in the right place. What if you are naive like Tommy Tallarico was and you hire a John Alvarado that makes the crappiest games in the world? What are you going to do? You already spent money on them. Might as well. You already paid them $150,000 a year. Oh my God. That number still, with the kind of crap that came out, it just boggles the mind, right? It's just a trip, guys. So basically this video, it's just for us that like, accounting, bean counter stuff. It's just crazy. It's just crazy. And that's why what in television, the old Intellivision Amico is doing is crazy. That's why, the people that are just pushing for a lot of games to come out is crazy. They never look at risk. They never look at the reality of actually how many people are going to buy these games. Because you look at yourself and you think you're a much greater audience than you are. Trust me, if people can make money off of you, off of any audience, the investors will come. Right? If the investors are not knocking on the doors because they haven't seen any proof yet that what you're claiming is true, and they're not going to risk their money. So they'll wait for you to risk your money on investment opportunities. See how the circle completes itself? That's harsh reality, guys. All right, I just want to make this video, on a Sunday afternoon. If you have, nothing else to do, you can ponder these business questions, these business propositions that nobody ever talks about, right? I talk about it because I find that interesting. I'm here about to develop a process map. I'm sure you find that interesting. I am tasked with improving efficiency by 25%. And by God, I will do that, let me tell you. Now I got to get to work. All right, humans, I will catch you on the next one. Take care. Make sure you join the channel if you want to go behind the scenes. Remember, we got some free games out there. If you want to choose a topic, you go to Kofi, and I will catch you on the next one. Take care.